Imagine a book so controversial, maybe so hidden, that when you tried to track it down, advertisers basically said it didn't exist. Didn't matter how much money you threw at them. A book claiming to detail a conspiracy stretching back millennia, tying together all sorts of historical events, ancient cults, modern politics, into one, well, pretty shocking story. Today, that's exactly what we're doing. We're taking a deep dive into a really extraordinary document.
Yeah, an extraordinary and frankly challenging one. Our source today is Scarlet and the Beast, written by John Daniel, published back in 1995. And like you said, this is definitely not your standard history book. It's this sprawling, incredibly detailed work presenting a highly conspiratorial view of history. Daniel lays out what he sees as this secret, ongoing plot against humanity and fundamentally against God.
Right. And it's really important how the author himself, John Daniel, sets this up. He outwardly says, and this is the direct quote, obviously not everything in this book is true, and you may disagree with a lot of it, and just like with any other book, you have to eat the meat and throw away the bone, but the positive far outweighs the negative. And he gives this motto, which feels central. Listen to everybody, read everything, believe nothing unless you can prove it for yourself.
Exactly. So that really sets our mission for this deep dive. We're not here to, confirm or debunk Daniel's claims. Our goal is just what he suggests, to unpack the meat of the text for you. We're going to lay out his arguments, explore the connections he makes, the patterns he sees, just so you can understand the perspective. It's about looking at history through this very specific, very intricate lens he provides. Then you can decide what, if anything, resonates.
And what got him started on this whole thing is pretty interesting, too. He talks about this personal journey, starting out skeptical, apparently. But then he discovered what he calls this conspiratorial view of history. And it shocked him, he says, because of its convergence with scriptural understanding.
That perceived alignment was the key for him. He felt, quote, compelled to examine this view of history further, which led him down this rabbit hole, collecting hundreds of other books and documents to build his case. And he frames this massive conspiracy as, essentially, Satan's age-old plot against God and humanity. He specifically points to the idea of the wicked one, Antichrist, who is indwelt by Satan, working through lies, lying wonders, and deceivableness.
So right off the bat, that framing tells you everything. He's not just seeing politics or economics at play. For Daniel, history is this grand spiritual battlefield. Deception isn't just a tactic. It's the main weapon of this malevolent force he identifies.
Absolutely. That's the bedrock of his whole analysis. Every secret society, every war, every cultural shift he interprets through that lens. It's all part of this ancient, ongoing spiritual war fought with deception.
Okay, so let's get into the core of it. At the heart of this massive, centuries-long conspiracy, Daniel identifies two main players, two opposing powers. And he roots their identities in biblical prophecy, right? Specifically, Revelation 17.
That's his foundation, yes.
Yeah.
Revelation 17, verses 3-5. He pulls two key figures from that imagery. The first he calls Scarlet, the whore of Babylon. This is a system, he argues, that's fundamentally idolatrous and pantheistic, worshiping creation, not the creator. Throughout the book, he just calls her Scarlet, and he links her to that biblical title. Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots.
Okay, Scarlet. Representing this sort of ancient, pagan, idolatrous system. And the second power.
The second power is the beast. And this one, in Daniel's view, is the opposite side of the coin, ideologically at least. He describes the beast as atheistic and humanistic. It's all about humanity being the ultimate measure, rejecting the divine.
But here's the twist, right? Even though one's idolatrous and the other's atheistic, he says they both share a core trait.
Exactly, and this is crucial to his whole argument. He says both Scarlet and the Beast are fundamentally anti-Semitic and anti-Christian. They might look like opposites, but in their opposition to biblical truth, he sees them as united. Two faces of the same enemy, essentially.
And there's a dynamic between them. It's not static.
Right, not static at all. He lays out this specific power shift. He says, at first, the whore, who throughout this book I call Scarlet, controls the beast. But in the end, the beast destroys Scarlet, the whore. So it's this evolving relationship. Control shifts, and it ends in this ultimate betrayal and destruction. This dynamic, he argues, plays out repeatedly in the historical events he analyzes. It's part of the predetermined plot as he sees it.
Okay, so if this goes back millennia, where does Daniel pinpoint the actual start, the root of this whole thing?
He takes it all the way back to the Tower of Babel, Genesis 11. You know the story. God confuses their language, scatters them across the earth because they were trying to build this tower to reach heaven.
Right.
From that moment, that scattering, Daniel concludes that the adversary for millenniums has had a plot of deception and division. He directly links it to Satan, the father of lies, and argues Satan's human minions will attempt to deceive others by any means. So for him, Babel isn't just an ancient myth, it's the literal starting point of this grand, deceptive scheme that's been running ever since.
Okay, so we have Scarlet and the Beast, these two ancient powers working through deception starting way back at Babel. But how do they coordinate? How do all these different groups supposedly involved in this plot actually work together without, just destroying each other? That seems like a key question.
It was a key question for Daniel, too. He apparently wrestled with that.
Yeah.
How could such diverse groups, often seemingly opposed, achieve any harmony? His answer came, he says, from Scripture again. 2 Thessalonians, the line about the mystery of iniquity doth already work.
The mystery of iniquity.
Yeah. For Daniel, that phrase was the light bulb moment. He concluded that harmony among these groups could only be achieved through the unifying bonds of a mystery religion. He felt that politics or money alone couldn't hold such disparate forces together over centuries. It had to be something deeper, something esoteric, something spiritual, in a sense.
And does he name this mystery religion?
Oh, absolutely, unequivocally. He says it's the Brotherhood of Freemasonry. He claims his research showed him that all conspiratorial groups are connected through Freemasonry. It's the absolute linchpin of his entire theory. For Daniel, Freemasonry isn't just one secret society among many. It's the underlying operating system. It's the structure that allows Scarlet and the Beast, these seemingly opposing forces, to coexist and manipulate events together.
So it provides the philosophical glue and the practical organization.
That's exactly how he presents it. The esoteric bonds and the global structure needed to execute this millennia-old plot, often using people who don't even realize the bigger picture they're part of.
Okay, now this is fascinating. He even sees the Scarlet Beast dynamic inside Freemasonry itself.
Yes, that's a key refinement of his theory. He argues there's an internal division within the Masonic Brotherhood that mirrors that exact same pattern. 2 opposing powers within the one structure.
So what are they?
On one side, he identifies London-based Freemasonry directly with Scarlet the Whore. He describes this branch as idolatrous and pantheistic, spiritual but pagan. Politically and economically, he labels it monarchist, capitalistic, wealthy, and right-wing. So, representing the established traditional power, but rooted in what he sees as corrupt, ancient spirituality.
Okay, London is Scarlet, and the other side.
That would be Paris-based Freemasonry, representing the Beast. This faction he portrays as atheistic and humanistic in origin and outlook, all about human reason, rejecting divinity. Politically, he calls them Republican, socialist, poor, and left-wing. The revolutionary, secular force aiming to tear down the old order.
Wow. So you have this monarchist, capitalist, paganish branch in London, and a Republican, socialist, atheistic branch in Paris. But they share a common enemy.
According to Daniel, yes. Despite all their differences, he insists both branches consciously oppose all that is biblically righteous. He even cites Masonic publications that, in his reading, claim that the God of Christians is evil, accusing God of holding back science and progress. He brings up examples like the Flood, Babel, the Catholic Inquisition's things. He says Mason's frame as divine interference stopping human enlightenment. And he contrasts Masonry's secrecy with historical reformers who fought openly, suggesting Masonry hides for more sinister reasons than just avoiding persecution.
And this isn't just a philosophical debate between London and Paris. He says it's a real rivalry.
A bitter rivalry is how he puts it. The Grand Orient Lodge of Paris is described as English Freemasonry's primary rival and most bitter enemy. He claims London sees itself as the Mother Grand Lodge and is constantly trying to destroy, or at the very least to isolate, the French Grand Orient. This internal war, he argues, shows London believes all other lodges are just subsidiaries it needs to control. And this hidden conflict, for Daniel, drives a lot of global politics.
So this secret war within Freemasonry actually impacts regular people, specifically the middle class.
That's his claim. He says, the middle class suffers most in the battle between the French and English lodges.
Yeah.
And he assigns them specific targets. French Masonry, the Beast, aims to destroy the middle and upper classes. English Masonry, Scarlet, aims to subdue the middle and lower classes. So it's like a pincer movement against the middle, orchestrated from both sides for the benefit of the elites running the show.
Okay, let's dig into the origins of Freemasonry itself then, according to Daniel. Not Judeo-Christian, he says.
Definitely not. He presents it as a universal pagan religion.
Yeah.
And he suggests the real secrets, the true pagan tenets, are only revealed to the highest level Masons, the 32nd and 33rd degrees. Lower-level members, he implies, are often kept in the dark.
He quotes Albert Pike, right? Morals and dogma.
Yes, a book Daniel calls the Mason's Daily Guide for Living. Pike writes, Masonry is a search after light. But for Daniel, this light isn't biblical light. It's this hidden esoteric knowledge, promising enlightenment outside of God, drawing on ancient wisdom.
And he traces this ancient wisdom back to Babylon.
Directly back to Babylon. He cites early Masonic documents like the York manuscript from 1560 and the Cook manuscript. These texts apparently state, at ye making of you tour of Babel, there was masonry first much esteemed of, and the king of Babylon yet was called. Nimrod was a mason himself and loved well masons. That direct link to Babel is crucial for Daniel's argument, tying Freemasonry right back to what he sees as the adversary's original plot.
And where does the Cabala fit in? He mentions that too.
Right. He calls the Cabala the rabbinical book of concealed mystery. But he's careful to distinguish it from mainstream Jewish mysticism. He quotes a Masonic historian, Dr. Mackey, who supposedly called it an apostate, occult form of Judaism, picked up during the Babylonian captivity. This distinction allows Daniel to link Masonry to these ancient pagan roots via the Cabala, and explains why he says the Scottish Rite is sometimes called the Jewish Rite, but in this very specific, non-biblical sense.
And even the rituals themselves point back to Babylon.
That's what he claims. He says the initiation rituals retrace Babylonian mystery religions, and they're conducted underground at night in the dark. This secrecy and the style of ritual for Daniel just reinforce his view of Masonry as fundamentally pagan and anti-Christian, perpetuating these ancient hidden practices. A journey into darkness, not light, in his view.
Okay, so that's the core organization, Freemasonry. Now, how does Daniel see it connecting to or spinning off other secret societies? He mentions the Rosicrucians first.
Yes, the Rosicrucians, or Rose Croix. He claims they actually infiltrated the old working man's guilds, like early trade unions, about a century before Freemasonry went public in 1717. But they weren't craftsmen. They called themselves speculative Masons because they were focused on theory, on esoteric ideas, not building things. This, for Daniel, shows these hidden philosophies weaving into existing structures. He names Johann Valentin Andrea, a supposed grandmaster in the mid-1600s, tasked with popularizing Rosicrucian ideas.
Then the Knights Templar, everyone's heard of them. What's Daniel's take?
Well, founded in 1118, supposedly to protect pilgrims, but Daniel says they quickly became much more a powerful military and financial force guarding secrets, not just travelers. He emphasizes their headquarters above the ruins of Solomon's temple, claiming they were after its unfathomable wealth, hinting it was more than just gold. He claims they picked up Gnosticism from the Cathars, practiced Hindu yoga to open the third eye, which he calls white magic or occult manipulation, and were involved with drugs. And that symbol, the skull and crossbones, he makes a direct, disturbing link to its use by the Nazi SS centuries later.
And it's the Templars, specifically the Scottish Templars exiled after 1688, who he says founded French Freemasonry.
That's his claim, yes. Founded French Freemasonry around 1725, which quickly evolved into the 32 degrees of the Scottish Rite by 1755. Meanwhile, the Templar York Rite from England came to America and is still active. This dual origin, he argues, set up that London versus Paris Masonic conflict we talked about.
And London was the birthplace for both Rosicrucian and Templar Masonry.
According to Daniel, yes. Which links these origins to the English Masonic power base. He argues the political split in England between the Hanoverians and the Stuarts led to the Jacobite, or Templar influence being pushed into France, creating the Grand Orient and setting up the big Masonic schism.
And in America, where does the Scottish Rite operate from?
He points out that the Southern Jurisdiction Supreme Council of the Scottish Rite, which follows the French obedience, actually has its spiritual HQ, its Grand East, in Charleston, South Carolina, and its political office, the Secretariat, moved to Washington, D.C. back in 1870. He mentions the Shriners calling them 32.5-degree Masons and their parades down Pennsylvania Avenue as a very visible sign of Masonry's influence, almost flaunting its hidden power.
Wow. And he even links this network to modern crime, the Mafia, the Triads.
He does. He claims English Freemasonry, the Scarlet Power, uses what he calls the Masonic Mafia. He specifically names the P2 Lodge in Italy a real controversial lodge, saying it laundered mafia drug money. And he alleges the Triads in Asia supply heroin, claiming their rituals are identical to Masonic ones, suggesting this deep, dark link between supposedly respectable fraternities and global crime syndicates.
Okay, this is already a complex web. But then he introduces another major player, potentially even older and more secretive, the Priory of Sion. What's the story there?
Ah, yes, the Priory of Sion. This has a whole other layer of, well, really profound esoteric claims. Daniel posits this group, maybe founded as early as 1090, is the guardian of the Merovingian bloodline. And this bloodline, he asserts, descends directly from Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene.
Whoa, okay, the Jesus bloodline.
That's the claim. The Priory sees themselves, according to Daniel, as Jews of the Davidic line and the true owners of the Holy Grail. And this isn't just ancient history for him. He says figures like Leonardo da Vinci, Isaac Newton, Victor Hugo were selected as grand masters for specific assignments to perpetuate this bloodline and its secrets. Their jobs, he claims, were dictated by their priory assignment and their symbol, the Eye of Osiris, which he connects to the Hindu third eye and Freemasonry's all-seeing eye, a shared symbol of ancient hidden knowledge.
So this incredibly secret order holds the key to the sacred lineage. How do they interact with the Templars in Daniel's narrative?
It's a complex relationship. He points to an event in 1188, the cutting of the elm at Gizors. After that, he claims Sion changed its name, using Ormus for secret ops. Jean de Gizors, Sion's first Grand Master, according to Daniel, is also supposedly the founder of the Rosicrucians, showing more overlap. For a while, he says, priory documents suggested the Templars planned to destroy Sion, a bitter rivalry. But then a twist in 1306. The priory lifted its veil, revealing its true identity to the Templars. This supposedly stunned the Templars, making them realize their real enemy wasn't the king or pope, but Sion itself, manipulating things from behind the scenes. And he adds that the priory claims to hold the lost treasure of the Temple of Jerusalem, waiting to return it to Israel when the time is right. Again, hinting at something more than just gold.
Moving closer to our time, he brings in the Golden Dawn, organized by Westcott and Mathers, a 32nd degree English Mason.
Right. And then comes Aleister Crowley, a really notorious figure. Daniel describes him as a 33rd degree Freemason, a drug addict, and avowed Satanist who took over the Golden Dawn. He disturbingly calls Crowley the idol of many rock and roll artists today, and even claims Crowley performed at least 150 human sacrifices. Very dark stuff.
And Crowley connects to the OTO, the Ordo Templi Orientis.
Yes, Daniel calls the OTO a cousin of the Golden Dawn, describing it as homicidal compared to the Golden Dawn's licentious nature. He says the OTO was originally part of the 33rd degree Grand Orient, but got infiltrated by the Golden Dawn in Germany. He also links Eliphas Levi, another Freemason, as an early OTO member and influence on Crowley, tightening these connections.
And the Thule Society, also linked to the Golden Dawn.
Another spin-off, yes, and equally homicidal in Daniel's view. Crucially, he claims the Thule Society served as the breeding grounds for the inner core of the Hitler movement, drawing a direct line from these occult groups to the rise of Nazism.
So all these groups, Rosicrucians, Templars, Sion, Golden Dawn, OTO, Thule, they form this interconnected network that leads ultimately to the New Age movement.
That's his argument. He points to the Theosophical Society founded by Helena Blavatsky in 1875, who he notes joined both French and English Masonry as the mother of the New Age movement. This whole vast network of secret and semi-secret groups, he claims, has one ultimate goal: one world government pushing a global spiritual and political agenda he sees as fundamentally anti-Christian.
Which brings us back to Freemasonry's public image. How does this supposedly vast, sinister network stay hidden in plain sight? He calls it benevolent deception.
Right. He argues Freemasonry consciously cultivates a positive public image to deflect suspicion. He uses examples like Senator Dole defending Masonry publicly, and the very visible charity work, like the Shriners Hospitals for Children. This strategy, he says, worked perfectly. It quiets questions in the public mind, letting the hidden agenda proceed.
And silence is enforced internally, the oath of silence.
Absolutely. He claims Masons swear silence upon penalty of death, a terrifying threat. This silence, he suggests, comes either from members being manipulated and unaware, or from higher-ups genuinely fearing retaliation if they speak out. He even claims some Masons as high as the 32nd degree might still be ignorant of the deepest Luciferian plots.
Beyond just silence, he talks about active mind control and propaganda.
Yeah, this is a significant claim. He uses the term Masonic Knights for influential members in society, journalists, judges, politicians, businessmen, even pastors. He claims these people are programmed in the Masonic Lodge and through Masonic publications like the New Age magazine on how to react to the issue at hand, basically ensuring they all toe the line on important issues.
And the media plays a big role.
A huge role, according to Daniel. Masonic media aims to, quote, scout into the shade all the fanatical writings, meaning anything critical critical of Masonry while promoting their own viewpoints. He cites French Masons supposedly wanting to control all our newspapers, using them like 100 hands to manipulate public opinion. It's a picture of total information control.
And this infiltration reaches the very top of the U.S. government and judiciary.
That's his assertion, a really sweeping claim. The majority of Supreme Court appointees have been Masons, implying a deep, systemic Masonic grip on American law.
And this Masonic court, he says, reinterpreted the Constitution, the whole separation of church and state idea.
He argues exactly that. He claims this Masonic-dominated Supreme Court pushed the idea of separation of church and state, which he says was falsely promoted by the Masonic media. And this, he claims, led directly to the rulings that took Bible reading and prayer out of public schools, a deliberate move to de-Christianize education.
And it didn't stop there. He links this to other major societal shifts.
No, he sees it as a cascade. After removing prayer, he claims the Masonic-controlled NEA, National Education Association, brought in a licentious new morality. Then, the Supreme Court legalized pornography, acted against parental authority, legalized contraception distribution, and ultimately abortion with Roe v. Wade. He specifically names Justice Brennan as a key architect of Roe v. Wade, portraying these decisions not as legal evolution, but as calculated steps in a Masonic plan to reshape society's morals.
And the ultimate goal of all this.
It's chilling. He quotes a source saying the aim was, "A reign of terror was to spread over the whole earth and to continue while Christians should be found obstinate enough to adhere to Christianity." It paints a picture of a relentless campaign to completely eradicate Christian belief and influence.
Okay, government, judiciary, media. What about the churches themselves? He claims infiltration there, too.
Oh, yes. Deep infiltration. He says Masonic penetration of our churches began at the turn of the 20th century. He cites a 1988 survey, and you have to take this source as presented, claiming 90% of Baptist churches and 70% of Methodist churches have pastors who are members of the Masonic Lodge. That's a staggering figure, if true.
And he connects this to figures like Jacob Schiff and the formation of major church councils?
Correct. He claims Jacob Schiff, sent by Grand Orient Freemasonry, aimed to control America's money and create a world organization for religious unity. This, Daniel alleges, led directly to the Federal Council of Churches, FCC, and later the World Council of Churches, WCC. He sees them not as genuine ecumenical bodies, but as Masonic fronts designed to dilute Christianity.
And these councils, the WCC and NCC, he accuses them of funding communists and terrorists.
That's the claim, that well-meaning Christians are essentially duped into funding Masonry's Antichrist revolution through their donations to these bodies. It implies even charitable giving gets twisted to serve this hidden agenda.
And the core issue for him is that Masonic pastors don't believe in the divinity of Christ.
That's his assertion, based on his interpretation of Masonic law. He claims Masons, including pastors, do not believe in the deity of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Instead, they pray to the great architect of the universe, which Daniel flatly states is the devil. His conclusion is blunt. Freemasonry has taken over some of the mainline churches of America, corrupting them from within.
And education again. After the Jesuits were suppressed, he says Freemasonry stepped in.
Immediately, according to Daniel, Grand Orient Freemasonry set up philanthropine schools, secular academies, specifically to replace the Jesuit schools and remove religious teaching.
And later, communists and the NEA pushed this further.
He links the League of the Just, which he connects to the Illuminati and later communists, to laying the groundwork for state-run secular schools. Then he points to Scottish Rite Masons within the NEA, like Willard Gibbons, establishing programs like Education for a New America, which he claims systematically taught atheism and globalism.
Even school consolidation was part of the plan.
He presents it that way, yes. Promoted by 33rd degree Mason James B. Conant, he argues consolidation was the Scottish Rite's next order of attack against parental influence, especially in rural areas where local Christian values might be stronger. His bottom line is that Freemasonry successfully banished the creed of Christians from public schools and replaced it with the evolutionary and atheistic creed of Mystery Babylon, shaping minds for generations.
Wow. Okay, let's shift to how Daniel sees this conspiracy actually orchestrating major world events, starting with the French Revolution.
Right. He states plainly, a definite conspiracy has been active in the events of the last 200 years. He points fingers directly at these secret societies. He brings in Voltaire, whose philosophy helped prime the French for revolt. And he claims key figures like the Duke of Lorraine, an English Freemason initiate, and Ramsay were specifically assigned to move against the French throne. a planned subversion.
And the Illuminati, founded by Weishaupt.
Founded 1776 by Adam Weishaupt, who Daniel says hated Jesuits. Crucially, Daniel claims the Illuminati was hidden within the first 3 degrees of Grand Orient Freemasonry, organized 1772. Weishaupt's first initiate, the Duke of Orleans, who was Grand Master of the French Grand Lodge and founded the clandestine Grand Orient. A direct link from the top of French Masonry to the Illuminati's agenda.
And concealment was key for the Illuminati.
Absolutely. Daniel quotes Weishaupt saying their great strength lies in its concealment. Let it never appear in its own name, but always covered by another name. None is fitter than the 3 lower degrees of Freemasonry. And that seal of the Illuminati, the pyramid and eye, Daniel says it communicated the group's Luciferian order assignment to initiates.
So French Freemasonry actively prepared the revolution.
That's Daniel's claim. That they worked in a hidden but constant manner, and that Grand Orient lodges later proclaimed Masonry, which prepared the revolution of 1789, is in duty bound to continue its work. He paints the revolutionary mobs as brainwashed by decades of atheistic Masonic literature, leading to atrocities. And disturbingly, he alleges that Grand Orient lodges today still ritually reenact the violence, guillotining animals, and miming the murders of Louis VI and Marie Antoinette, celebrating it as a victory.
Okay, turning across the Atlantic to the American Revolution, Daniel suggests a hidden Templar angle here too.
Yes, a Templar bid to take America from Rosicrucian England, as he puts it. He claims Thomas Paine, whom he identifies as a Grand Orient Freemason, actually went back to England before the Revolution to set up lodges there, laying groundwork.
And George Washington, a Templar Freemason.
That's how Daniel describes him. And he makes the remarkable claim that the British generals Howe basically let the colonists win through gentlemanly good sportsmanship, implying it wasn't just fair play, but part of a larger Masonic arrangement.
What about the Great Seal of the United States? He sees hidden symbols there.
Oh, yes. He claims Sion, the Priory, and the Temple, Templars, were united in founding the U.S. Their sacred symbols, he says, are peering through the glory cloud above the eagle, signifying their oversight of the nation. He points out the 13 stars form Sion's 6-pointed star, and claims Benjamin Franklin, who he calls a Zionist and Illuminati member, knew the esoteric meaning of 13.
And the U.S. was chosen for a specific role.
Chosen as the new protector of the King of Jerusalem cult, when Sion and the Temple supposedly reunited. A profound claim that America was designated from the start to guard this ancient bloodline and advance its agenda.
Moving into the 19th century, Napoleon and the Rothschilds. How do they fit in?
Daniel claims Templar Grand Orient Freemasonry, the Beast, basically allowed Napoleon to become emperor, helping him weaken Austrian and Russian power. Napoleon as a Masonic tool.
And the Rothschilds funding both sides of the Napoleonic Wars.
Daniel highlights that fact, suggesting it confirms suspicions that Rothschild was manipulating the conflict for profit. And when Rothschild moved his bank HQ to London, Daniel sees that as sealing the marriage between the Rothschilds and English Freemasonry, linking immense wealth to the Scarlet faction.
The 19th century also saw lots of revolutions and unifications, orchestrated, according to Daniel.
Absolutely. He points to Mazzini, leader of Young Italy and director of the Illuminati, he claims, bringing Masonic revolution to Italy. Crucially, he says Mazzini was funded by Palmerston, an English Freemason involved in British intelligence, a coordinated destabilization effort.
And this idea of a Masonic super right, the Palladian right.
Yes, a very significant claim. That Albert Pike, American Masonry head, Palmerston, English, Bismarck, German statesman, and Mazzini, Italian revolutionary, joined forces. They supposedly united the French, British, and American Masonic hierarchies into this new and reformed Palladian rite. Daniel explains Palladium comes from a Hindu word for the phallus, linking it back to the Templar orientation, and the phallic worship he claims is central to Masonry.
And he links English Freemasonry to the Masonic mafia and drug trafficking again here.
Yes, through the P2 Lodge in Italy, laundering mafia money, and the triads in Asia providing heroin. He explicitly accuses English Freemasonry of running massive drug operations in Europe and Asia via these groups.
What about Russia? The revolutions, communism. How does Daniel weave that in?
He makes the startling claim that Friedrich Engels, whom he calls a Gentile Templar Freemason, was the real mastermind behind Marx, that Engels used Marx to front the philosophy of communism, protecting wealthy Grand Orient Masons from exposure. So Engels, not Marx, is the father of Marxism in this view.
And Russian Masons wanted revolution.
He says Russian Grand Orients openly aimed for the overthrow of the autocracy. And the Bolshevik Revolution itself, deliberately engineered, he claims, funded by German Grand Orient Mason Max Warburg, who sent Lenin to Russia. Trotsky, he says, was prepped by Jacob Schiff and released from British custody on President Wilson's orders, influenced by Colonel House, a 33rd-degree Mason, specifically to go foment revolution in Russia, a completely orchestrated event.
Even the Soviet secret police, the Cheka, Masonic links.
He suggests it might have been an exclusive Masonic lodge of OTO Masons based on symbols allegedly left on victims, and he notes they slaughtered millions based on class, middle-upper, fitting the beast's agenda. Stalin, he claims, was a Martinist Freemason initiated by the Rosicrucian Gurdjieff, who later purged Jews and closed borders to contain Zionism, hinting at complex internal Masonic power plays. And he notes Gorbachev planned to reopen Masonic lodges after 1989, suggesting continued influence.
The World Wars. How does Daniel frame those colossal conflicts?
As the ultimate clash between the Masonic duality, World War I, he argues, wasn't just nations fighting, it was a global war between British, monarchists, and French Republican Freemasonry to decide which political system would rule the world.
And the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, Masonic agents?
Directly blamed on Masonic agents like Gavrilo Princip. The motive: Ferdinand was supposedly Merovingian, a threat to Sion, Catholic, and trying to free Yugoslavia from Masonry, a crime in the eyes of Masonry. The war sparked by occult politics.
U.S. entry into WWI. Also manipulated.
Orchestrated by Colonel E.M. House, 33rd-degree Mason, making behind-the-scenes agreements with England, America drawn in by hidden hands.
And World War II. Nazi links to the occult and Masonry.
Deep links, according to Daniel. The Nazi Party tied to the Thule Society and OTO, involved in Luciferian doctrine, practicing witchcraft with a vengeance. Hitler, he claims, inspired by Bulwer-Lytton, godfather of the Nazi movement, and initiated into the secret doctrine by Dietrich Eckart, occult roots for Nazism.
And financial backing from Henry Ford, a 33rd-degree Mason.
That's the shocking claim. That Henry Ford financed Hitler, and the Bank for International Settlements, BIS, controlled by British Masons, Rothschild, was supposedly used by the Nazis to store looted gold. Deep financial complicity.
The Yalta Conference shaping the post-war world, negotiated by Masons.
By the world's three leading Masons, Daniel claims: Roosevelt, Churchill, and Stalin. He says this led to Hungary being given to the Soviets, and asserts the Yalta Agreement wasn't really their idea, but part of the larger Masonic plan.
And post-war Germany remained under Masonic influence.
He claims almost everyone in a significant position was a Mason. Figures like Otto John, counterespionage head, and Prince Louis Ferdinand supposedly called Chancellor Adenauer American property. And the Nuremberg trials. Daniel claims they buried the truth of the fraternity connections, covering up Masonic involvement.
Okay, finally, the big post-war global structures. The League of Nations, the UN, Masonic creations.
That's his argument. The League of Nations was pushed by a Masonic Congress in Paris way back in 1917, and the UN, founded jointly by French and English Freemasonry, Scarlet and Beast working together. He says the U.S. State Department's CFR members designed its structure. He even cites the Vatican confirming the UN is controlled in fundamental points by Freemasonry, with Masons in key roles.
The Council on Foreign Relations, CFR, a Masonic front.
A pro-British Masonic front that effectively took over the State Department by 1945, in Daniel's view, direct control of U.S. foreign policy.
And the Trilateral Commission?
Sprang from Masonic roundtable groups, tasked with implementing English Freemasonry's concept of one-world idealism. The Tri being North America, Western Europe, Japan, global reach.
And the European Union, or United States of Europe.
A long-held desire of French Freemasonry, finally realized, a mighty economic political union, but for Daniel, it's a strategic step towards a Masonic superstate.
Which brings us to the ultimate endgame Daniel describes, a Luciferian world order. He quotes Albert Pike to reveal the supposed true god of Freemasonry.
Yes, this quote is absolutely central for Daniel. From an 1889 letter by Pike, 33rd degree Grand Commander, read aloud at a major Masonic Congress in Paris.
What does it say?
Pike allegedly wrote, "The Masonic religion should be, by all of us initiates of the high degree, maintained in the purity of the Luciferian doctrine. The doctrine of Satanism is a heresy, and the true and pure philosophic religion is the belief in Lucifer, the equal of Adonai. But Lucifer, god of light and god of good, is struggling for humanity against Adonai, the god of darkness and evil." For Daniel, this is the smoking gun. Proof that high-level Masonry worships Lucifer, viewing the god of the Bible, Adonai, as evil.
And this Luciferian view sees Lucifer's fall differently.
Yeah.
And connects to evolution.
Right. Lucifer fell because he reasoned himself equal to God. This leads, Daniel claims, to seeing evolution as a kind of witchcraft, a way for humans to become gods themselves. Masonry, he asserts, believes the kingdom of God is established by the evolution and development of man himself, not by God's grace, a total inversion.
And they hold Christianity in contempt.
Daniel says Masonic writings speak of Christianity with sarcasm, calling the apostles dunces who substituted faith for science, a deep disdain for Christian belief.
This Luciferian influence extends to music, using it for revolution.
He claims Masonry learned from Lucifer how music could provoke revolution. He points to Mozart's magic flute, getting material from a grandmaster, as early revolutionary propaganda. And then he makes a huge leap, linking this to modern rock and roll.
Rock and roll promotes satanic ritual murder.
That's his extreme claim, that it promotes satanic ritual murder leading to actual human sacrifices throughout our land. He cites examples like the Night Stalker Ramirez shouting "Hail Satan" and the occult themes and heavy metal music mixing drugs and darkness.
And the connection to Aleister Crowley again.
Yes, the admiration for Crowley among rock artists. He mentions the Rolling Stones song Mr. Crowley and claims Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven includes lyrics from a Golden Dawn initiation rite, Luciferian messages embedded in pop culture.
He also connects Masonic ritual to sexuality and violence. Phallic worship.
Yes, he claims Masonic ritual is essentially the worship of the male and female sex organs as God, or phallic worship, symbolized by the point within a circle.
And promoting licentiousness.
He claims groups like the Tugendbunds, using Reform Jews as fronts, he says, taught licentiousness and commerce with women as virtuous before the French Revolution, a deliberate undermining of morality.
And even infanticide and child sacrifice.
A truly disturbing claim. He describes these acts as ancient rites to a demon god who wanted blood. He connects this to modern population control theories from Masons like Malthus and Drysdale, and he asserts that New Age rituals require blood as an appropriate offering to pagan goddesses to save the earth, a hidden bloody side to modern spirituality, in his view.
Okay, now the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Sion, a very controversial document, historically known as an anti-Semitic forgery.
Exactly. Widely debunked, used to incite hatred against Jews, cited by Hitler. That historical context was crucial.
But Daniel argues they're not Jewish. He links them to
Mizraim Freemasonry? Yes, that's his controversial reinterpretation. He acknowledges their misuse, but claims they're actually linked to this Mizraim branch of Masonry, founded by Cagliostro, a double agent, he says, and the Alliance Israelite Universelle. He argues they actually echo Illuminati plans, making them a Masonic blueprint, not a Jewish one.
And his argument hinges on Masonic terminology, calling initiates Jews.
That's a key part. He claims Gentile Freemasonry uses Jews for initiates, Solomon's Temple for lodges, and Gentiles for outsiders. He even interprets Jack the Ripper's infamous Jews message through this lens, a Masonic code, not a misspelling.
And the text itself talks about a Masonic kingdom.
Frequently, Daniel points out, not a Jewish kingdom. He also links the crowned cobras, European monarchs, to British Masonry and the Grail blood, tying it all together.
In that line, ours they will not touch.
Daniel argues ours means Freemasonry, not Jews, his proof. After WWII, Freemasonry came back stronger than ever, founding the United Nations, while others suffered. This, for him, shows the protocols were about Masonic survival and triumph.
Okay, let's bring it home to America's role in all this, according to Daniel. The dollar bill symbol.
The all-seeing eye and pyramid. He highlights its Masonic significance, noting FDR, a 32nd degree Mason, ordered it placed on the bill, and VP Wallace, also 32nd degree, confirmed its importance. A public nod to Masonic oversight, he argues.
And Washington, D.C.'s layout. A Masonic city.
Meticulously designed, he claims. The street layout forming a pentagram, the House of the Temple at its center, the Washington Monument aligning with the Masonic Square, all deliberate homage to Sion and the Templars. The city's design reveals its masters.
And prophetically, he sees the U.S. not as ignored, but as central, as revived Rome or the Beast Nation.
Exactly. He challenges prophecy teachers who ignore the U.S. He boldly claims the U.S. is the Beast Nation. He draws detailed parallels, 14 characteristics shared with ancient Rome: republic, power balance, laws, slavery, capitalism, entertainment, welfare, military, abortion for population control. For him, the parallels are undeniable proof.
And the U.S. is the little horn from the Book of Daniel.
That's his interpretation. A young nation rising from the old Roman Empire's territory, becoming a democratic republic, capitalist fitting the description, he argues.
So the U.S. becomes the ultimate protector of the Priory of Sion.
The new protector of the Priory of Sion, yes, guarding the bloodline and secrets. He claims Templar Freemasonry will build the New World Order in America under Sion's watchful eye. The culmination of the plan happens here.
And this leads to warnings for America, reaping what was sown.
Dire warnings. The U.S. is reaping the fruits of the Illuminati seeds. Current problems, earthquakes, bad weather, AIDS, economic woes, bad leaders. He sees them as divine plagues for not separating from these unclean Masonic influences.
And London is Mystery Babylon.
Yes, London, England itself, not Rome. He argues its destruction would crash the world economy, unlike Rome's fall. Therefore, English Freemasonry, Scarlet, is the true mother of harlots, the ultimate source of global corruption.
So the final goal is what?
A one-world totalitarian government controlled by her global Babylonian religion, where ultimately man is his own king. A complete inversion, a world ruled by self-made gods and secret societies, the Luciferian New World Order fully realized.
Well, as we wrap up this truly extraordinary deep dive, we've certainly covered a lot of ground. We've journeyed through John Daniel's Scarlet and the Beast, this incredibly intricate tapestry of secret societies, alleged historical manipulation, this battle for global control, from ancient Babel to Freemasonry's supposed dual powers, Scarlet and the Beast, their orchestration of history, right up to modern Washington, D.C., and this idea of a Luciferian New World Order.
It is a staggering narrative, absolutely packed with detail across hundreds and hundreds of pages. And Daniel's own advice at the start seems pretty relevant here. Listen to everybody, read everything, believe nothing unless you can prove it for yourself. Tell you. So when you, listening now, are faced with such a comprehensive, yet, let's face it, wildly unconventional interpretation of history, how do you even begin to sift through it? How do you discern what might be meat and what might be bone, as Daniel puts it? What claim maybe stood out to you as the most, I don't know, surprising or unsettling? And how might exploring a perspective like this, even if you disagree with it, make you look at commonly accepted history differently?
Yeah, it's definitely a deep dive that offers a stark reminder about that ongoing search for understanding, and maybe the importance of looking at all kinds of sources, even challenging ones, with a critical eye, but maybe an open mind too. Perhaps the biggest takeaway isn't about agreeing or disagreeing with every single point Daniel makes, but about how encountering such a vast, interconnected alternative narrative forces you to just reconsider. Reconsider what you thought you knew about the hidden currents that might or might not be shaping our world. It certainly gives you a lot to think about.